Hey, folks, and welcome to another episode of 8 News Real Talk. I'm your host, Tannock Blair, and with me, as always, is my co-host, Julia Broberg.
Hello.
Hey, Julia.
Hi, Tannock.
Today, we are reviewing a new release and a very, very old one, a classic, but both films about fighters, maybe rise and fall, one being a rise story, one being a fall, I guess. But... yeah, we'll start with the Smashing Machine. This was released last Friday. New film from Benny Safdie, of the Safdie brothers, known for Uncut Gems, Good Time. His first film alone, without his brother Josh. Josh has Marty Supreme coming out later this year.
When does that come out?
I think towards the end of the year.
Okay.
I think it's more like November, December, something like that. Yeah, it's a biographical true story on sort of a point in the career of Mark Kerr, one of the early MMA fighting sort of legends, before MMA was what it was.
Were you familiar with his story before you saw the movie?
So I'm not a huge MMA fan. I was familiar with Kerr, and I'm familiar with a little bit of MMA stuff just because I am a male in his 20s, and I feel like...
I am a male in his 20s.
At some point, the algorithm decides to feed you videos of Don Fry fighting Takayama and other various clips from Pride, specifically, which was this fighting league that sort of pre-existed the UFC, or they sort of both existed around the same time, but Pride doesn't exist anymore, mainly because it was a bit lawless. The rules, as explored in this Smashing Machine, the rules of sort of anything goes MMA fighting, and it all took place in Japan. So Mark Kerr was part of that sort of generation, that time period, and the Smashing Machine is about a portion of his career during that sort of golden era. It is also a big sort of acting comeback vehicle for Dwayne Johnson, aka The Rock. So there's a little bit of room for metatextual sort of storytelling there with his own experience working in, a martial art, or, obviously pro wrestling that he took part in is more about the performance than the sport of it, but it's certainly still just as demanding on the body and just as similarly dangerous and a martial art in its own way. So enough preamble. What did you think of the Smashing Machine?
I liked it a lot more than I thought I was going to, like more than I thought going in. Not that I don't like a good fight movie. My dad was a wrestler, boxer dude, so I remember watching a lot of those movies growing up. But I really, really enjoyed it. It emotionally resonated with me. Not that I can relate to a man MMA fighter that's been through the struggles that he has, but I don't know. I just thought it was a really, really good performance from The Rock and from Emily Blunt. And I just enjoy Benny Safdie. I enjoy how the Safdies approach projects and how they can put their kind of quirkiness, offbeatness into their movies very well. A part of me wants to give it 5 stars.
Wow.
I know.
All right.
But I don't know. I'm gonna give it 5 stars because that is how I felt about this movie when I saw it in the theaters.
There we go.
And the soundtrack ripped. The soundtrack was very, very good, and the score was very good.
How
did you feel?
Surprising, it was like a jazzy soundtrack, which
Yeah.
is not what I was expecting at all.
Same.
It was like cool jazz.
For a cool guy.
Yeah. It's not like the type of soundtrack you immediately think of when you think of fighting movie or sports movie like this.
And opioid addiction.
That's
But
interesting. Yeah. Spoilers. We will get to that.
you're like, spoiler alert, no opioid talk until we get to spoilers.
I'm actually a lot colder on this.
Yeah.
You knew it. You expected it.
I could just hear it up. I had a feeling. I know when you sit down what you're...
You can read my mind, can't you?
Okay.
This was one of my most anticipated movies of the year. I think it's the best trailer of the year.
Oh
I
yeah.
love the trailer for the Smashing Machine. The way it like does the Sinatra "I Did It My Way" music with it, and I think all the best parts of the movie are in the trailer as well. So I was really, really excited for this, and I'm a fan of the Safdies and their previous work. I love Good Time. I really love Uncut Gems. But yeah, I think for me, this sort of, it's beholden to the true story. It's beholden to this biopic thing, but it does feel like we're treading on sort of cliches from sports movies or biopics in general, right? Like the same trappings of the drug addiction, spoilers.
Whoa. Yeah, I
The
can't talk about
pressures
the
of
drug addiction, but you can talk about the drug addiction. All right.
the pressures of fame, et cetera, et cetera. I love the Safdie brothers' style. Their like adherence to reality, or trying to make things feel very real,
Yeah.
or the way that people talk to each other usually. But I think that this one was weak in that regard, in that a lot of it felt a little Hollywood, which I was surprised by. And to get into the specifics of where I'm talking about that, we'll have to get into spoilers. So
Opioids. As soon as you turn into the spoiler thing, I just immediately start talking about. I'm like, can we please talk about the opioids?
do you want to try? I already sort of outlined what the basic premise is.
What
But
star did you give it? What star?
I'm
rating did you
sorry.
give it? That's okay.
I'm giving it 3 stars.
Okay. Okay.
Thank
No,
you.
that's not-
Thank you for catching me out there.
That's
Yeah,
not
I'm going to give it
terrible.
3 stars. A light 3 stars. I think it's a good movie. Certainly not a bad movie. It was just more predictable and didn't bring anything new or exciting, which is what I was sort of expecting. Because every other Safdie brother movie I've seen has surprised me, or done something that feels really fresh and entirely new. This felt like it was operating within a long tradition of biopics, and specifically, we're reviewing this alongside Rocky, but the real appropriate counter film for this is Raging Bull. Have you seen Raging Bull?
I've not seen Raging Bull.
So that is also a true story about a boxer it's mostly about his personal life, his rocky relationship to his
Rocky
wife and his brother.
relationship.
It is very, very similar. I think people who have seen Raging Bull will probably feel similarly to the way I feel about this, where this is Raging Bull light a
This is
little
a
bit.
poor man's Raging Bull.
There are a lot of similarities. I think there are differences in the type of character. Like Mark Kerr is a different person to Robert De Niro's character. I can't remember the name of the Raging Bull boxer. Particularly, the story of Raging Bull is more that he's a great fighter, but he sort of brings the fight home with him. Like he's abusive to his partner and things, and he doesn't have a good handle on how to deal with his emotions correctly. Like his machoism is sort of also toxically violent. That is not Mark Kerr for a lot of this movie. He's a very sweet sort of guy.
I think that's what makes him so endearing as a character, is that
Yeah.
he's this really strong fighter
Yeah.
that can beat somebody almost to death in a ring, but then is this really calm, collected, kind-hearted,
Right.
soft kind of guy.
Right.
In a lot of
We get
ways.
the obligatory scene where he has to smash something.
Yeah, well, he's the
at his home.
smashing machine. Smash
Where
machine's
like
gotta smash something.
there's a dramatic scene with him and his girlfriend, his partner, and of course they yell at each other and he has to break some stuff.
He breaks a door like clean off. Like he breaks a door in half. The door looked like it was made out of cardboard, but still, it was pretty.
But he never, lays a hand on her or anything like that. He doesn't bring his violence home with him, or it's
In that
not his
way.
way of dealing with problems. So that's very different. But the substance abuse part is very similar to Raging Bull as well. And it's a big part of sort of the second act of this movie, is him dealing with that and overcoming it. What did you think of what were some parts of this, aside from the performances and things that you really love about the story specifically?
I don't know. I just like you were saying earlier, they try to make it feel very real. With movies like this and from the Safdie brothers, I always feel like you truly feel like a spectator. Like you feel like you're just kind of tagging along in this person's story. Like you're part of the camera crew that is just filming.
It feels like a
and watching.
documentary.
Yes.
Yeah.
In a way. And I really enjoy that because I feel like it's a good way to become really engaged with the source material. And I don't know, I like that you see his arc of, I don't know, a lot of times with addictive personalities, you're moving from one addiction to another, even if it's not an opioid or drugs.
Right.
Like his addiction was training or fighting, and then it was the opioids, and then sometimes the addiction can become recovery. Like you become too far into the recovery thing, and obviously addiction's a whole complex thing to try and tackle, while also telling his whole like story within those years. I don't know. I really liked watching how he progressed, and I like that you get to see in that final fight where you think, oh, maybe it is going to be him and Coleman at the end. I don't know. There's this one scene that really, really stood out to me, and I did tear up a lot at this movie. I did cry a lot at this movie. Sorry, I'm just a girl. I'm a human. Where he's finished that fight, he lost the fight that would get him to that final step. And his trainer is just pouring water all over his body. Like he pours a whole bottle of water on him. And it's just this moment, I don't know. It's like you can see the relief of him just kind of like lift off his shoulders. This big guy who's fought his whole life, has been in constant pain, has been through substance abuse and had to overcome that. And his crazy girlfriend, which we can get into that because obviously women are nuanced, but Dawn is a little cray. And I don't know, you just see like, I don't have anything to prove anymore. I don't have to carry this weight of constantly winning, never losing, having this whole, I don't know. It was just I just liked the progression of his character, and I liked watching him go through these struggles and try to fight. Because it's, it sounds so cliche, but it's like two battles. It's the battle in the ring, and then it's a battle against himself. And it's always interesting to watch how that plays off. And I think Safdie did it. Definitely. I love Benny. So Benny did a good job.
His documentary style is really interesting because there actually is a documentary that was shot during Mark Kerr's time called The Smashing Machine. So Safdie's well aware of this. He watched it. He's implementing reenacting some parts of that actual documentary where, like, around this time in Mark Kerr's career, there was a documentary crew following him around. And I haven't seen it. I would love to see that documentary and see where the similarities are. If he pulled that exact thing of some of those things that feel really real, like the pouring of the cold water on his back or something, maybe that's literally from the documentary or something. But also something that Safdie's really good at is sort of that realistic sort of dialogue where it's just the way people talk to each other feels so authentic to how real conversations happen. It doesn't feel like movie dialogue. I think some of the best parts of this film for me is him and Dawn sort of passive aggressively just going about their daily life at home.
Just that first where she makes him the smoothie and he's like, I know I did. And also his disarming like Midwest accent, where that comes in and you're like, it's kind of uncanny where you see this big guy come hulking in. Yeah. It's like, oh no, honey, I switched to whole milk from skim milk. I'll just make it again. And you're like, is he going to hit her now? Like, is he just going to...
It's really good. I think that, I'm less enthused by Dwayne Johnson's performance than perhaps you are. I think it's totally serviceable. Maybe my expectations were a little too high going in just because I am like a big fan of his acting. I love him in Pain and Gain. I know he can act really well. So I think for people who have underestimated him or undersold him, I think this will be the movie that makes them realize that he's a great actor. But for those of us that already knew it, it feels like it's a serviceable performance. I mean, he does everything he needs to. The whole movie rests on his shoulders. If he falters, then the movie fails, and it definitely doesn't come to that. He has some really, really emotional scenes that he does really well. But the real standout, I think, the best performance in the whole movie is the non-actor playing Mark Coleman.
Ryan Bader.
Yeah.
He crushed.
A real UFC fighter. I think the scene with him visiting Kerr in the hospital, like, I think Johnson has the easy job there of breaking down and fake crying. Like the hard like acting performance there is everything that Beta is saying on his face and his reaction shots and things and the way he says things.
Is having that real conversation where at first they're joking around, they're making jokes about like, what'd you do, man?
That's
you partied
great
too
writing
hard?
too. That is just Safdie's great writing. But
And then it has to take that turn where he's like, dude, come on. Like, what are you doing? Like, you got to talk to me and we got to figure this out.
Yeah.
Because this is, that seems very...
I think he stole the show for me. I was like, this guy can act. And surprising, this is one thing that isn't communicated in the trailer. You're sort of I was expecting, like with Raging Bull, that it would be a story about a relationship. Like it's about Dawn and Kerr. But when you finally get to the end of the movie, I felt like the bromance aspect of this friendship between Coleman and Kerr is like the real heart of the movie. Even though it doesn't really... There's no arc to it. There's no real challenges that they have to face as friends, except for Kerr's own personal stuff. Their friendship is just solid the whole way through. They're just good friends and good to each other from start to finish. But there's something really comforting and special about like that kind of male friendship depicted on screen. It's really cool.
I like that the ending, because I was expecting obviously some big when Coleman wins that him and Kerr are gonna...
Right.
But I do like that it was just this kind of simultaneous, he's getting stitches, Kerr is getting stitches, while you see Coleman kind of take in this big win on his own.
Yeah.
And I liked that sort of like I think they both reached where they needed to. They both got where they meant to be.
Agreed.
If that makes sense.
So for me, I'll talk a little bit more about weakness because I think I'm on board with you so far on all the pros and things. Where this film falls a little short for me, I do find the whole opioid addiction subplot to be a little bit tired ground. It's resolved very quickly with him going to rehab in the middle of the movie. Not that the effects of it don't linger on the film and it doesn't hold a point or anything. But it does feel just like a little simplified or Hollywood. And I would have loved to have dived into it a little bit more, but instead we get these somewhat repetitive scenes with him and Dawn. The first passive-aggressive scene is great, and then you get another one with them out by the pool, and then another one with they're prepping for a party, and Dawn sort of, starts a fight because she can't help it.
She has some mental problems. I think she had some mental illnesses that she was dealing with.
I mean, she's a three-dimensional character. You can see like she cares for him and things, but like sometimes people just can't help themselves with like saying things that should just stay in their head, and it starts a fight or whatever. I like it, but it does get a little repetitive, and it feels like it's not contributing to the strengths of the film, which I think is what you were I think the friendship is the strength of the film, and what you said, as cliched as it is, it's the fight within himself, as well as the fight on the in the octagon or whatever. Those are the stronger parts, and I think it spends way too much time on this relationship that it doesn't know what to do with necessarily, except for play the hits over and over again because it's dramatic.
Agree with what you're saying, and I understand your complaints about the substance abuse stuff and the repetitiveness of the relationships, but I think, from my point of view, I think they did the best they could with the coverage of his substance abuse issues in the time they had, while they also, because Safdie obviously did want to highlight the different
and you're beholden to a true story. Like, my complaints are things that, like, maybe the repetitive, like, Dawn and Kerr fights arguments in the house, like, isn't necessary. But yeah, what if that's how it happened and he did, he went to rehab and he quit cold turkey and that was it, then you're beholden to the truth at a certain point. You can't, like, you don't want to sensationalize it or something when you're dealing with someone's real life. And obviously Kerr makes an appearance at the end of the film. He's still alive. This is his story to tell. But just from a viewing perspective, from like what am I learning or appreciating? I wanted to learn more about like what is like mixed martial arts. This is a very like fascinating time for mixed martial arts where it's still sort of underground. There's a reason that these fighters had to go to Japan and things like they couldn't get. UFC was so small it couldn't get aired on TV and things. I think there's more interesting aspects of the sport that I would have preferred that the film focus on instead of what is ultimately like not a new story, or it's not told in any new way of the struggles with fame and addiction and things. It's a personal preference, but if this was my first time ever being presented with one of these stories, it's told serviceably, it's told well, but I think there was just an opportunity to tell a different story here, and I don't think that they did that necessarily.
That's fair.
Cool. All right. Well, that's the Smashing Machine. We'll take a quick break, and we'll be back with Rocky. All right, and we're back talking about an absolute classic. This is one of my favorite movies of all time. So I'll get my review out of the way first. This is an easy 5 stars for me. I'm really interested to hear what you think. This was your first time seeing it. And I remember the first time I saw it, it definitely didn't click for me. I didn't like it. I liked the sports movie aspects of it, but most of this movie is not a sports movie. It's a drama. And I remember when I was a teenager or whatever, I found it sort of boring.
More punch. Why doesn't he punch people more?
Now I have a completely different perspective on that and a different appreciation for the type of movie this is and the actual story that it's telling. But what did you think of 1976's Rocky?
I really enjoyed it. I would also probably give it a 5-star because I understand. It's very, very understandably a classic. Mm-hmm. Obviously, it has I think what makes it such a great movie is that it has its flaws and its...
Yes, definitely.
But I think that's what adds to its charm. And Sylvester Stallone's charm as just this adorable little underdog guy that's trying to go out with the shy girl on his block and just trying to, make money.
Yep.
And do what he wants to do. And then he gets this shot. There are really no fight scenes in this until you get to the very end.
Yeah.
And even then it's kind of, but
yeah.
I just had a great time watching the progression of him and Adrian and... Yeah. I really enjoyed it. And it was funny. I did not expect it to be as funny as it was. Yeah. Again, in a sort of charming, endearing way.
All right. Well, let's get into to spoilers because I'm itching to talk about this movie.
You're like, let's just get into it.
Let me set the scene. I think you already know this. You mentioned when the credits were playing, written by Sylvester Stallone. This comes out in 1976. He writes the script in I think 2.5 days or 3.5 days, while being sort of an unemployed actor. He had done a couple of things. He'd been in Lords of Flatbush, which was
classic. Like we've all seen it. I mean,
he had done some like bit parts in some Woody Allen movies or something, sort of like Schwarzenegger. I think he was in Annie Hall as like a random goon or whatever. So I guess that was just how all these 80s action stars got their start. But yeah, he was realizing it's so beautifully metatextual to the story of Rocky as an underdog, sort of going the distance, that this was a struggling actor who had, I think the way he tells it is he had like $130 in his bank account total. His wife was expecting, and he was really, he was 30. He was towards the end of like, if you're having a burgeoning acting career, usually you start a little earlier. And he decided he was going to, I think the way he tells it, he saw the movie Easy Rider and thought, I can write better than that at least.
First of all, that's crazy, but good for him.
Which it kind of makes sense because when you watch Easy Rider, it's got such a freestyle, like sort of improvisational feel to it. Yeah. It's a similar story with how Kevin Smith wrote Clerks. He saw Slackers from Richard Linklater and was like, I can do better than that. This is just people like
You're gonna have that
meandering
moment.
around chatting.
You're gonna have that moment with some movie. You're
Yeah.
gonna be like, I can write something better than.
So the first script he wrote was about a wrestler. And he ended up making this movie after Rocky. It's called Paradise Alley. But no one would buy it. And then he ended up writing Rocky after, I think he watched some sort of Muhammad Ali fight or something and got the inspiration for it. And he writes the story, shops around, and he makes one like absolutely non-negotiable sort of rule to whoever picks up the script is that he must act as the star.
Naturally.
Which, you know, the script was so good that Erwin Winkler and Robert Chardoff took a chance on him and hired an unexpected director in John G. Alvidson, who was like very much a new Hollywood sort of transgressive filmmaker. I mentioned before we started watching that he directed the movie Joe, which is a straight up like exploitation movie.
Good movie, but kind of insane.
It makes for a really interesting mix of styles where Stallone is writing from he's writing like a Frank Capra sort of 1930s or 40s sort of fantasy film.
And just little moments of like instilling wisdom in the characters you meet
Right.
and talking about life's
Right.
issues. And
then Alvidson is a director who just wants to grime this thing up and make it as dirty and as ugly as possible. And the combination of those influences, I think, makes something really, really special. Where it does feel very real, and it makes those moments of sentimentality, which I think are actually pretty few and far between for Rocky. I think this is a really dark movie until like the end. But yeah, I do want to speak about the ending actually. Because even though Rocky doesn't win, spoilers.
what?
You didn't know that, right?
I thought he
going
did
in?
win. No, I did not
Yeah.
know anything about. I just knew that he screams Adrian at the end, but I
Yeah.
didn't know what that was in relation to. I didn't know if she died or
Right.
like maybe Apollo launched
Right.
off and like punched Adrian in the face or something.
And this coming out in the 70s, you're expecting a bad ending, like a sad
Yeah.
ending. That's how all of these went. Talking of Easy Rider or Taxi Driver, or, you know, this was the whole thing with New Hollywood. It was this sort of vibe of pessimism that was running through all of these movies.
That's why you love the movies of the 70s.
I really do, yeah.
Pessimism just
Yeah.
runs rampant.
But Rocky was the first film in a long time, I think, that like just had a resounding, joyous, sort of like cathartic, happy ending. And it sort of transformed Hollywood from then on. I mean, everyone always talks about the blockbuster 1-2 punch of Jaws, 1975, 1 year before this, and Star Wars in 77, changing the movie landscape, and they absolutely did. But I think this was the one that showed that even prestige dramas and things could tell happy stories again, and American audiences were ready for that. So that's the whole preamble of context, history, etc. Why don't you tell us what Rocky's about?
No, I thought you were gonna do that I thought you were
I know.
gonna tag that onto
I
the
was going to tag it
preamble.
on, but
Rocky Balboa is Sylvester Stallone. I'm just scared I'm going to get something wrong, and you're going to be like, no, he didn't talk to Mickey about that until later. He's a down on his luck guy who used to be like, had the potential to be a great fighter. You can tell that that's kind of fallen off. He's fallen in with some bad people. He's like I hate to goon bodyguard,
Yeah.
not bodyguard, but like
a leg breaker. is
leg
what
breaker
Mickey
for a
calls him.
loan shark,
Yeah.
you know, because this is the 70s
Yeah.
and those things existed. Maybe they still do. It's just not in the same way.
Yeah.
And so that's where you kind of find him. But then you see that he's trying to kind of make something. He has something in him that wants to make something of himself. He has a thing for a girl that works at a pet shop on his street, Adrian, who is the sister of Paulie, just the worst man you've ever met in your life.
Yeah.
Just a piece of crud
Played
of a man.
perfectly by Burt Young.
Yes.
Just a real scumbag.
Works
character.
at, just doesn't like his life, always drinking, always works in a frozen meat locker.
Yeah.
But then Rocky gets this chance to fight Apollo Creed, played by Carl Weathers. He gets picked out because they're like, why don't we just pick out an underdog
Yeah.
to fight you? You know, this is the American story, you know.
Yeah. Well,
And
so Creed is the World Heavyweight Championship title holder. And he was scheduled to fight someone else, but their hand is broken or something. They have to make a last minute sub in. And because it's coinciding with the time of, is it Liberty Day or
sure.
some sort of, maybe it's 4th of July. I don't know. It's all very like America Founding Fathers themed.
America.
He decides what's more American than opportunity, being the land of opportunity. Why don't we find some no-name underdog fighter and give him a shot at the title? It'll be a great sort of marketing, promotional gimmick.
But they don't count on the Italian stallion to show up. And so then you see Rocky really kick it into gear, and then obviously you get the great training montages. He has the heart-to-heart with Mickey, his trainer, who is also hilarious.
I love Mickey.
Mickey is fantastic. 2 girls come up while Rocky's training to get like his autograph. They're like, "Can we get your autograph?" Mickey's like, "Get out of here!" Like he just like screams as like this decrepit.
Apparently, an earlier draft of the script was even darker than this one, and Mickey was written as like an outright racist, which totally fits.
You're
Don't
like,
even
which
have
would
to
have been
write
fine.
that in the script. We can tell Mickey is probably a racist.
That's the undertones of
He is like the most crotchety old man ever put to film.
God love him. God love him. But yeah, and so then you see Rocky's like really gonna put his all into this, and so then you get to the the fight between him and Apollo Creed, which he does lose.
Mm-hmm. But he goes the distance.
But he goes the distance, and that's what he says. He has this heart-to-heart with Adrian, and he's like, as long as I can be there in the ring, like I'm standing up next to him when the belt, like after the the rounds are over, and I can say that I really held my own.
And that's an incredible scene where it's one shot, slowly zooming in, where Stallone delivers this monologue about how he doesn't think he can beat him, and if he can just go the distance, make it to the end, all 15 rounds. No one's ever made it all 15 rounds against Apollo Creed before. He says, I can prove to, he says to everyone, but honestly, he wants to prove to himself that he's more than just a bum, which is the thing that people keep calling him throughout the movie. I think that's the real thing. There are 2 sides to the story. I think the main one is the love story, and I want to get to that later. But the other part is this need to prove oneself. The very first thing, like the very first scene of the movie is Rocky in this fight. He ends up winning the fight. But it's like against some other washed up fighter. They're in some underground,
something.
Yeah, they're in some underground, like grungy looking boxing ring, and like the crowd is booing him and yelling at him. My favorite is that one lady who goes, "You're a bum!" Like right as he's like walking out, he like asked to borrow a cigarette from some guy. And at the beginning, there's that guy who's betting on Rocky. He says, "I bet on you to go 3 more rounds. You think how are you feeling, or whatever?" And it looks like that guy's going to be his friend or something, but that guy never shows up again. And I think that's like part of this, right? Is like. He doesn't have anyone in his corner in that scene. Like there's literally some provided like fighter guy in his corner, but he doesn't know the guy. He doesn't have any friends or anyone that he can count on necessarily. There's one great scene, and I really wanted to talk to you about the scene where we see how he interacts with people in the neighborhood, and anyone else that is sort of also in this, very low socioeconomic area of Philadelphia. The doo-wop singers on the corner
Of course.
hovering over like a burning trash can, like the homeless person he carries into like his dive bar sort of pub thing that he goes to. He's known around the block, and he's well liked, I think, by the people there, but he knows that everyone thinks he's a loser, and he thinks he's a loser as well to a certain extent. he puts on sort of like this coping mechanism of constantly making jokes and trying to,
Don't know what that's like.
have a bit of bravado to sort of compensate for it, but you can tell like behind every single joke that there's this like sad guy who feels like he wasted his potential. And the scene we're watching here where he like has a big confrontation with Mickey is where you get to hear him sort of externalize that a little bit, because he doesn't talk about it to anyone until Adrian, which again we'll get to in a second. But there's one scene where he's lecturing a girl in the neighborhood and she's not buying it at all, because he doesn't really sound super intelligent in his words of wisdom. He doesn't really have words of wisdom to give to this person the way he maybe thinks he does. He's trying to do a nice thing.
Yeah. But it's like she doesn't have to worry about what he's saying yet. Yeah. She's 10.
And exactly what he says when she says "screw you, Rocky," or "up yours," or whatever. when he's finished walking her home, he goes, "Yeah, why would she listen to you? You're just a bum." Like he recognizes that like he has no right to be giving anyone advice.
It's a sweet scene though. It's just insane. He's basically telling this 10-year-old girl that's hanging around with her friends outside a liquor store trying to get booze. He's like, how are men gonna see you? You don't want men to see you. Like, women don't talk nice. Guys are gonna see you. It's easy.
When he's saying all of that, he's talking about himself.
Yeah.
He's talking about like, it doesn't matter if you actually do the things that constitute that
your
rep.
perception is going to.
It's the rep. It's the rep that sticks with you. So what he's talking about his own life there, where like he isn't a bum. He doesn't think he's a bum. He does believe in himself, but he knows that the rep sticks with him that he's a bum because of the fact that he didn't make it as a fighter, or as we know, he's working this pretty terrible job as an enforcer for a loan shark. It's a pretty dishonorable position. It's the reason why Mickey says it's a waste of life, because he says it's a living, and then he goes, it's a waste of life. It's it's really incredible. So
he is the 10-year-old girl, really.
Exactly.
I'm saying that sincerely, but that came off as like
no. You're exactly right. That's how I read that scene anyway. But then he finds someone that makes him stronger, that fills gaps.
His girly pop.
Yeah.
If you will.
Yeah, Adrian. And this is like my favorite love story of any movie ever.
It's how it should be. A shy girl and just a yappy guy that won't shut up.
Yes.
And
I love the scene. I think it's the second scene at the pet shop where she's, working at the bird cage or whatever, and he is just yapping. He is just talking about whatever comes to his head, because that's how it is when an introvert and extrovert like sit together. Like, I have friends, I consider myself to be fairly introverted. I have like one of my best friends who is just an absolute yapper, and we can just hang out and he will just keep talking about whatever, and it's just a comforting thing that like one person's the listener, one person's the talker. And I love that scene. I love that it's such an offbeat kind of chemistry. It's not like, especially because of how shy she is in the beginning. Like, she is so shy that you can't even really tell if she likes him or not.
That's why I really like that scene. He's yapping for like 10 minutes. And you just see her. I'm like, is she even enjoying this? But then at the end, he's like, bye, Adrian. She's like, bye, Rocky. I'm like,
that's the key. It's such a simple, like, it's not a flashy line, and nothing about like Rocky is especially flashy, but it's those subtleties, I think, that is what makes this like a great movie in my mind.
I will say though, that scene where Paulie tells Rocky, he's like, I set you up with my sister. You guys are going to go out tonight. It's Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
And Rocky keeps saying it's very funny. Your sister knows, like, I'm coming over, right? Like, yeah. She's really excited about it. And they go into the home, and basically Paulie takes the turkey that she's making out of the oven and throws it in the yard and is like, you're going to go out with this guy.
It's one of the most awful things I've ever seen anyone do in a movie.
And you're like, and I'm like, I would be furious. That happens. And then some random man's knocked at the door like, you want to like hang out? But first it works because Rocky, you can just tell that
it says so much about the relationship between Paulie and Adrian, where they look after each other. Like, they live together. Neither of them have, a romantic relationship. Like neither of them have significant others. It's a brother and sister living together.
They
looking
understand
after
each other's flaws.
Right. But he is so abusive to her, and she is unable to stand up to him because she's an introvert, she's shy, whatever. Something about her means that she just can't stand up to him the way she wishes she could. But once she starts being with Rocky and those gaps get filled, it's only when Paulie's attacking Rocky that she gets the courage to like stand up for herself and Rocky.
You
and put him in
can't
his
speak
place.
to him that way, and you can't.
It's an incredible scene. But I love that you brought up that first date scene because there are so many things in that first date that are red flags about Rocky.
What do you mean? What are you talking about?
First of all, when Paulie is being clearly abusive, he doesn't speak up. He doesn't intervene.
If anything, he's focused on, he's like, I feel really uncomfortable with this man. Like,
Right.
I don't want to. And it's like, you're uncomfortable?
Yeah. And
Obviously.
I love that. I love that Rocky is not... He's not a hero. He's not like... he doesn't have necessarily heroic qualities and that...
He never, like, beats Paulie up and, like...
No. But he never even, stands up to Paulie. He never even says something to talk Paulie down or, you know, says that that's not right. I think... I do love that... I think a different version of the story, a more sentimental version of the story, would make Rocky more righteous. I love the grays that every character sort of operates in within this film. Rocky is not a perfect guy. He is, you know, he's brought up, he low economic status in Philadelphia. He's not the brightest guy in the world. He's nice. He does genuinely mean well to everyone. You can see that when he brings the homeless person outside the bar inside and things like that.
He's got his turtles.
Yeah, but he's not very assertive or strong. He might seem like it when he's talking. He can feel very confident in a pet shop with Adrian, and he can yap and be braggadocious and sort of project a bit of that machismo. But put him in a room with the promoter for Apollo Creed's fight, and he becomes a quiet, scared little guy.
Put him in front of the TV. Put him in front of a camera, and he doesn't know how to.
I love that, and there are more problematic things later in the date when he brings her up to his apartment and he won't let her leave.
I told you this
clearly...
is this is a surefire way any man out there to get a girl. You just corner her in your apartment. You don't let her use the door, and even when she's expressed, I'm uncomfortable and I don't want to stay here. You go, but I want to kiss you, so I'm gonna kiss you. And so you just do that.
It's really uncomfortable. It is like,
but it works out for him.
Well, yes, okay, no harm, no foul, I guess. But no, really, it is like it's an incredibly uncomfortable thing. And part of it, sure, you can shrug it off and say it was the '70s, a different time. Like this was acceptable behavior, to audiences and to the general public at that time. But I don't like to shrug that off because I think it's something worth grappling with. That like, no, it is the wrong thing to do, even in that context. And I think Rocky doesn't have to be perfect, though. He doesn't have to always do the right thing. I think
it was also a thing of the 70s. For some reason, you've seen it in a lot of movies. It's like the guys, when you see these introverted girls, and it's like, it's the guy's job to get it out of her. Like, she wants to do this. She just won't let herself.
Right.
And it's like, I don't think that's always the case.
I think what the film is operating at, this is like the way that the whole script is written from Stallone's perspective. He's writing himself like a Marlon Brando movie, right? Like it feels like something like a Tennessee Williams like script in that regard. That feels like a scene from a Tennessee Williams thing.
Yeah,
where it's
very
like,
much.
There's conflict and it's uncomfortable and it's not right, but there's something still, there's a chemistry or a romanticism underneath it, which is old-fashioned to say the least, an old-fashioned way of looking at romance.
Well, you do tell at a certain point Adrian does feel safe with Rocky.
Yeah.
Or else she wouldn't have gone. But she wouldn't have gone into the apartment.
Right.
But again, just because a girl goes into the apartment doesn't mean she wants to get
exactly.
doesn't mean she wants to be cornered. But yeah, when he put his hand on the door, I was like, oh.
Yeah.
Oh no. And then I just look over at Tannock's like, not shrugging it off.
I do genuinely think that works. I think the film is, in that scene, I'm always watching it from Adrian's perspective, which is like a little bit like, I don't know how I feel about this. I feel like that's how Adrian feels. And it's not until they start to kiss and then you're like, oh, she really does love him. Like,
no, she's into it. She's into it, guys. she's kissing her. She's into it.
It sounds bad, but it doesn't play. I mean, it plays with the tension of this could go horribly wrong,
Yeah.
and then it's like a relief. It's like it's a romantic thing in the end, but yeah.
But it took a little bit to get there. It took
But
us
I
some
love,
questionable roads to
again,
get
I
there.
love the way Rocky is, like, this film is operating in sort of gray areas of not everyone is a perfect righteous person at every moment. And not everyone's evil the whole time. I think the most evil person in it isn't even the loan shark. Like, Gazzo is a lovely person to Rocky.
Yeah, he's like, here's $900 for
he
your...
gives him $500 to make sure he can train and take time off, his usual leg breaking job and things. He's very sweet. He
comes to the fight.
He goes ringside to the fight. Like, that's something like you're not really expecting from that certain type of character. In another version of this film, he would be an antagonist that Rocky has to get over or prove himself or stand up against at some point. The closest thing to a villain is Burt Young as Paulie. Paulie is just like awful the whole way through.
He is a villain. Would be a villain, yes.
But even he has like little moments to shine where he shows, Rocky calls him a good man. And at first I'm like, I don't see that. I don't know what Rocky sees in this guy. But there are a couple of moments. One is right at the end when he lifts up the ring for Adrian to get through to Rocky. That is like a genuine heroic moment for Paulie. As small as it is, I think it means a lot. And the other is when he's being at his most abusive, which is that scene where he throws the turkey out into the street and sort of ruins this thing that Adrian's been working, all day probably for the both of them for. He says something. He says, "Go out and live your life," to her. Like, as terrible as his actions are, I think he really does want the best for his sister. And he's one of the people who thinks that that doesn't look down on Rocky or think Rocky is a bum. Like, he thinks that they're a good match, and he wants her to be happy. I think it's just the way he goes about it is really, really terrible.
No, he wants her to be happy. He just wants to ruin her, physical, mental, emotional state in the process. But he's really trying to help her out.
He's a really great guy.
When he threw the turkey out the window, he's really trying to help her.
Yeah, this is where like the things about this movie that are just so unique that maybe the Smashing Machine needed a bit more of this, if I'm being honest. It's unfair to compare.
It
these
needed
films.
Burt Young. It
very
needed
different.
a Paulie.
It needed more like the film is not moralistic. It's not really a type of film that is applying. Here's the good guys doing good things, and here's the bad guys doing bad things. It's about how two people make each other stronger, and it's about working to prove yourself and prove your potential, and that's what's so incredible about the movie, I think, and why it hits every time, and why I cry when he calls out Daedra. I mean, that is, speaking of the filmmaking, I talked about how Alvidson has this grimy, gritty sort of look to things. It's so cathartic to get that big sweeping score with the crowd chanting Rocky towards the end of the final round, and then like the only thing he cares about is just calling out to her. That's all he wants is in like that running through the crowd to each other. I think it's just like cinematic bliss. I think it's just like.
And it's okay to cry. Men out there, it's okay to cry when he shouts Adrian.
That's right.
It's okay. Actually, I think that makes you more of a man to cry. That's my opinion.
Also in the gray, sorry, I think that would have been a great place to end it off, but I wanted to talk a little bit more about Mickey, because aside from how crotchety and great he is and just how he yells at everybody, another incredible scene is the one where he comes up and asks Rocky to be his manager, because there's something sort of pathetic and sad about it, like, and desperate, that he really has been treating Rocky like crap leading up to this, and he comes out with his little newspaper clipping of his fight, and he starts talking about himself, and Rocky's half paying attention, like
playing darts.
Yeah. I love that, because there is that part of it that feels like, oh, this is just a desperate guy trying to get his chance to live glory through Rocky. But he genuinely is coming from a point of experience where I wish I had had a manager. I wish I had had someone to keep me in line and like make sure that I could do the absolute best that I could.
And he's like, I know I can do that for you.
Yeah. And so there's this huge fight, and then we get that lovely wide shot of Rocky running down the street, and we don't hear what they say necessarily, but you see them like shake hands or whatever. Just incredible. And the soundtrack from Bill Conti with everyone talks about the Gonna Fly Now like triumphant music, but it's the quiet piano piece in the film that I think is like really, really incredible. When Rocky's just walking around Philadelphia with his ball or whatever, like throwing that around, and that music is playing. There's something so beautifully melancholic about it. I think it's incredible. So yeah, perfect movie in my mind.
Agreed. I don't know if it's a perfect movie, but I enjoyed it very much.
It's really interesting to see where the series goes from here. I recommend at least watching 2 and maybe 3. 2 becomes a proper sports movie, like something closer to Smashing Machine, where, you know, the training and the fight becomes more focused than the personal aspects of it. 3 is a straight up action movie, and 4 is like a comic book movie. 5 is like a TV special of the week. And then 6 is like
I can't believe they made 6.
Yeah. And then we get the 3 Creed movies after that, which Rocky is also a part of. Yeah, it's really weird how all the characters get flanderized. Like Paulie becomes a comic relief character for the rest of the movies, which is really strange.
I could see that.
Yeah, but like all of his previous sins are just sort of forgiven and forgotten. Yeah, it's sort of when we get to the 80s, things get weird, I think. Movies got weird in the 80s with Stallone's career and just in general, but this is still squarely in that new Hollywood sort of vein of a 70s film, and it's perfect in that regard, I think. So
Slatina.
All right, well, I think that does it for this week's episode of Real Talk.
If you guys couldn't tell, Tannock does not like the movie Rocky at all.
I could have kept going, but I need to cut myself off at a certain point. So we didn't even talk about Carl Weathers.
You go back to you're like, actually, if we could just, no.
But yeah, I you know, people probably know to see Rocky. We probably don't have to tell them, but
well, it's a pretty indie film, you know.
Yeah. But there you go, Smashing Machine and Rocky. I think it's a recommendation for both films for us. Even though I was a little colder on Smashing Machine, it's still a good movie.
And
still
I would probably really and realistically give it a 4, but like in my heart, it's a 5. And I gotta go by my heart. Thank you.
Speak your truth.
Thank you, Tannock.
All right, we'll see you all next week. Thank you for tuning in.